I'll zoom in even closer in a moment, but for the time being, I'm adding light to this entire sort of front area now, this front wall. And I'm doing it very lightly with quite a dry brush. Because that first paint that I put on here is actually a fairly thin layer. There is a little bit of texture there. And I'm laying it on with a fairly dry brush because I don't want a solid block of red, especially with reds. The saturation of the color is so high that you can easily kill everything around it. However, if you just lay your brush on fairly dry and fairly lightly, it reduces that effect of the saturation. Also, our warp and weft is showing through a little bit. I'd like that to stay maintained. Just giving a sense of texture on the surface. Yes, we have this funny pink board. I've got to tell you, I really don't mind it that much. Maybe I'll continue it, I'll let it catch a little bit of light on this side as well. Maybe just a bit, it'll fade off. Okay, that's about as pink as I would dare to go. Okay, let's see. We'll add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it. That'll bring us closer to the color. Then we'll add a little more white to it. That'll bring our value up a little bit. Is that back to being too pink? Yes, it is. Okay, a little more ultramarine blue. And I think maybe a bit of cad red medium. How's that doing? I think that'll work. I'll back up in a minute so that you can actually see the effect of having laid over the higher values over the darker values. And and that's another reason I mentioned earlier that I did not want to go back into the red front wall of the shed until it was dry enough that I would not pick up any paint from the layer underneath the one that I'm working on. Okay, that's a little bit weak there. Let me just grab a bit of this stuff and strengthen this line here. It's looking a little bit smeary, which I don't really want. Not when your brush strokes are that direct, not when they're that vivid. Yeah, you can smear them a little bit as you back off into the distance, but close up, we don't want that. What else can I do in here? Actually, what I think I'll do, while I'm in this neighborhood, let's back up a little bit. Let's just paint in a couple of these wall studs that are in behind here. I've decided not to have this line run right through. because we had too much of this going on already. So I decided to break it, cap the end of this wall. So here, a little bit in the shade, here a little more in the sun. We're certainly doing away with most of our hard lines regarding sun and shade though. I'm just trying to, I think now, put a general soft glow on the front of the shed. And, you know, laying more light on here, on this area, certainly makes it pop more than here. It's a little bit more in your face, which, considering the place that it holds in the painting, I think is good. You know, really, this is the most in-your-face area of the painting. I'm pretty much playing all my cards. I might leave that board a little bit dark, just for the sake of variety. I think that still works. But sooner or later, I do have to have a little bit of that light. I think that's too brown. I was going to just use burnt sienna, you know, because that's another high chroma, but it's also adjacent to so much red. I think it might get lost in those reds. So what we'll do is, we won't use raw sienna, or burnt sienna rather. We'll go to raw umber, which is a lot cooler. Almost as cool as this. Yeah, about as cool as this. I'll allow a little bit of burnt sienna to show through. I don't want the value quite as high on these studs as on the door jamb and that patchwork there. I also don't want a brush right now that's laden with paint, because I need to keep in control. I need to stay in control of this a little bit, and I want a little bit of warp and weft showing through. Not a ton, but definitely something. Try not to get too tidy. A little bit shaky this morning. Alright, maybe I should just stop playing with that now. Okay. Okay. Stop it. Just quit playing on it. Oh, wait a sec. One more little bit. those tops down a little bit. Okay, let me zoom in. Let me back up and give you a bit of an overview. So you see how that's popping now, that foreground wall. It's popping considerably more than it was. Sorry, my light's quite bad in here right now. We'll try that out. I'm not quite squared off, but that'll have to do. And then okay, so you can see that bit of texture. If we use a fairly dry brush, that texture will show through. Because you'll have, you know, tiny raised areas picking up some paint. The recessed areas not so much. And when you back up, you see a little more texture. I think that front wall is pretty much where we want it to be. Yeah, I might play on the roof now. We'll see what the day brings. Anyway, see you soon, guys.